for Willow's future. Before her civil service exam interview, I took it upon myself to hang up on her ex-boyfriend, the one who caused her to miscarry 4 times. I thought I was doing it for her good, but to my surprise, after she successfully landed the job, she found out that because I rejected her ex's call, he blocked her. She held a grudge against me. In the end, while I wasn't paying attention, she pushed me into the river and drowned me. She yelled, "Damn simp, you ruined my love life. I want you to go to hell." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the interview for the civil service exam. This time, without hesitation, I answered the call and handed it to Willow just before she entered the exam room. Then, she completely ignored the examiner's entrance cue and ran out of the room without a second thought towards her ex-boyfriend. Chapter 1. The exam entrance cue rang, and Willow, with tears in her eyes, ignored the teacher's attempts to stop her. She grabbed the umbrella from my hands and ran straight into the pouring rain. People around us started whispering, "Oh my God, what's she doing? It's almost time to go in." Someone else remarked, "Willow, she's probably the top scorer on the written exam. She's giving up on the interview. This position is really hard to get." Hearing the murmurs and watching Willow disappear into the downpour, I finally felt the weight of reality. I had truly been reborn. A guy standing next to me asked, "Hey, aren't you childhood friends with that Willow? Did something urgent come up? This position is so hard to get." She just walked away and you didn't try to stop her. I waved dismissively at the guy who'd started the conversation. Not close. I don't get involved in other people's business, not interfering in others' fates. That was a lesson I'd learned the hard way in my past life. In the end, Willow's departure was seen as her giving up on the interview. Even though she was first in the written exam, she had no chance at the civil service position. This had happened exactly like this in my past life. At the critical moment of her interview for the civil service exam, Willow's irresponsible ex-boyfriend called her. For her future, I hung up on the call right away, hoping to let her focus on the interview. But after she succeeded, the first thing she did was try to get back together with her ex. I had no idea that when she called him, she found out she'd been blocked. The only message she received was, "Willow, since you won't answer my calls, we should never see each other again." Willow blamed me for hanging up, believing I had made her miss out on her true love. She arranged to meet me by the river, her face twisted in anger as she screamed at me, "George, who told you to get involved in my business? You bastard!" Before I could react, she pushed me into the river, yelling, "Damn simp, you ruined my love life. I want you to go to hell." I was swept away by the fast-moving river, my body struggling to stay afloat. But in the end, I couldn't hold on. The sensation of suffocation, the burning of water in my lungs, and the endless darkness surrounded me. That was how my life ended in such a miserable and pitiful way. But to my shock, when I opened my eyes again, I found myself reborn. I was back at the moment when Willow's ex had called her. Looking at the vibrating phone and the Willow who was about to enter the exam room, I answered the call without hesitation and called out to stop her. I didn't know what was said on the other end of the phone, but Willow looked conflicted. Yet, in the end, as if making up her mind, she resolutely gave up the interview, took the umbrella, and ran off. She seemed to have completely forgotten about me standing there. I just watched coldly, not stopping her. In this life, I had to let go of my urge to help and respect others' fates. Chapter 2. By the time I got home, the news that Willow was going to marry her deadbeat ex-boyfriend had already spread throughout the entire village. But Willow herself hadn't come back. She had only called her mother and said that she was giving up on the interview and marrying the deadbeat. Lou's mother fainted as soon as she heard. My mother, upon hearing the news, sighed deeply, saying, "Just look at that girl, Willow. She's getting married already. Son, you should let go. This clearly means you two have no fate together." Seeing my troubled expression, my mother thought I couldn't move on from Willow and gently tried to console me. Willow and I had grown up together. As a child, she would always stick to me, following me around and calling me Wang Gege in a sweet babyish voice. The villagers often joked about us, saying, "These two are so close. Maybe Willow will marry George when she grows up." As we grew older and entered high school, seeing Willow blossom into a beautiful young woman, I became shy when hearing that same old joke again. That was when I realized I liked this girl, the one who had been by my side all this time. Throughout high school, I suppressed my overwhelming feelings and stayed by her side. I'd bring her lunch, remind her to put on more clothes, tutor her in her studies. Then we both got into the same dream university. Her radiant youth shone brighter than anything else, and she truly dazzled my teenage years. But after starting university, before I could confess, I found out Willow had already fallen for someone else. Willow had fallen for Makoto, a troublemaker from the vocational school next door. One night, while Willow was returning to school, she was followed by a pervert, and Makoto, who was smoking by the corner of the wall, saved her and began to aggressively pursue her. Willow, who had always been a good girl, was quickly swayed by Makoto's rebellious charm. She started skipping classes, drinking, going to bars, and even failed a few courses by the end of the semester. I had tried to talk to her about it, but she was exhausted after a night of clubbing with Makoto and impatiently said, "George, why are you always lecturing me? I worked so hard to get into college. What's wrong with relaxing a little?" Looking at her face now, covered in smoky makeup, the thick eyeliner hiding her youthful innocence, I could no longer see the girl she used to be. When we first entered college, she had told me, "Wangege, let's promise to work hard and get into grad school together. We'll still be schoolmates in grad school." But that girl who said those words was gone. I realized I might lose Willow for good. In the end, after graduating from university, I followed the plan and successfully got into grad school. Willow, however, had failed too many courses, and due to her absences had received a formal warning, almost failing to graduate. It was only through my pleading, helping her make up the courses, that she barely managed to keep her diploma. Later, Makoto cheated on her and dumped her. After a period of grief and silence, Willow finally decided to try for a civil service position. She had always been smart and hardworking, and if she put in the effort, the civil service exam wouldn't be a problem for her. Just like when we were kids, she came to ask for my help preparing for the exam. Seeing her finally decide to leave Makoto and get back on her feet made me happy, so I gave my all to help her prepare, finding her all the materials she needed. In the end, she scored first in the written exam and passed into the interview. On the eve of the interview, she was both nervous and excited, asking if I could accompany her on the day of the interview. She said, "Wangege, if you're with me, I won't be so nervous." I smiled and agreed, seeing her face so clear in my memories, and said I'd go with her. The rain was heavy that day, and to avoid delays I drove her to the interview. But once again, nothing I did could compare to the power of a call from Makoto. Even my life wasn't worth as much as a single hair on his head. This time she gave up half a year of hard preparation and the advantage of scoring first in the written exam, all to chase after her love. Watching her figure slowly fade into the rain, I exhaled a deep breath. It was better this way. From now on, we would go our separate ways. With my face as calm as ever, I returned home. But I hadn't expected Liu Mother to come knocking first. I was changing a light bulb in my room when I heard her loud shouting at the door. She angrily yelled, "George, get out here. You're going to explain yourself today." I frowned and went out, and my mom, holding some freshly washed clothes, looked at Liu Mother in surprise and asked Mrs. Liu what's going on. To my surprise, Liu Mother shoved my mom, roughly causing her to stumble, and the laundry basket fell with a loud crash, clothes scattering everywhere. I rushed over to help my mom and pick up the clothes, my voice cold as I said, "Mrs. Liu, what are you doing?" She put her hands on her hips, glaring at me as she demanded, "I want to know right now, did you instigate Willow to give up the interview? She's gone running back to that scumbag. Why didn't you stop her? Are you trying to ruin her life? I trusted you to take care of Willow. You're going to destroy our family." Liu Mother began wailing easily, shifting the blame for Willow's abandonment of the interview onto me. Chapter 3. My mother widened her eyes and retorted on my behalf, "Mrs. Liu, what are you talking about? George is not that kind of person." I stood behind my mother and calmly said to Mrs. Liu, "Mrs. Liu, you've misunderstood. It was Makoto who called Willow." It was Willow's phone, and if she wanted to answer, how could I stop her seeing Mrs. Liu acting irrationally? I smirked and started to fabricate, saying, "As for why Willow gave up the interview, isn't it all because of you?" Mrs. Liu's pupils widened in disbelief. "What nonsense are you spouting? How could it be because of me?" I continued, "You didn't approve of Willow being with Makoto. You thought he was just a punk. Willow said that if she passed the civil service exam, you would oppose them even more, so she decided to give up the interview at the last minute." Mrs. Liu was so stunned by this absurd excuse that she couldn't say anything. Meanwhile, due to Mrs. Liu's loud shouting, a few neighbors had gathered outside the door and were gossiping. One person said, "Lady, you really shouldn't be meddling in the children's affairs. Yeah, even if Willow did something wrong, it's not George's fault. Why are you causing a scene at his house?" Mrs. Liu's face turned red with embarrassment as she glared at me, muttering curses under her breath as she walked away. She said, "When that girl comes back, I'll break her legs." The incident gradually faded, but to my surprise, 3 months later, Willow came back. And with her came Makoto. Makoto, who had managed to mesmerize Willow, was indeed quite handsome. He had that rebellious bad boy charm, the kind of guy who would make the good girl blush in a romance drama. Willow was nestled in Makoto's arms, smiling sweetly yet nervously. We met at the village entrance, and Willow's eyes lit up when she saw me. She said, "Wangege, this is Makoto." Makoto smirked provocatively, his eyes full of disdain and pride, and said, "You're the brother who grew up with Willow, right? She's mentioned you before. Sorry, but Willow and I are getting married." He emphasized the word "sorry" with a victorious air. Hearing that, I was somewhat stunned. They were in such a hurry to get married, but they didn't even have proper jobs. How could they afford a wedding? Then Willow shyly smiled and touched her stomach, saying, "I'm pregnant, 5 weeks along. That's why we want to get married first." A wave of emotions hit me. Willow was pregnant again. Despite having already miscarried 4 times for Makoto before, they had only been dating for 4 years, and she'd miscarried 4 times. Each time, I was the one accompanying her to the hospital. The last time we went to the hospital, the doctor had looked at me in frustration, saying, "You two are such troublemakers. If there's a next time, she might not even be able to have children." He thought I was Willow's boyfriend and scolded me harshly. But now, Willow was pregnant with Makoto's child again. My gaze fell on Willow's belly, and I couldn't help but feel a deep, indescribable sympathy. If this child survived, it might be even more unfortunate than the ones that were lost before. A mother who was love-struck, a father who lived in debt, a grandmother obsessed with money, and a broken home waiting to happen. Yes, Makoto still owed loans and had been blacklisted by the bank for overdue payments. He was a deadbeat. I wanted to force a smile, but I couldn't. Instead, I calmly congratulated them. "You're going to be parents. Congratulations." I walked past them, wondering how Willow had managed to convince her mother. Chapter 4. On my way back from Grandma's house at the east end of the village, I happened to pass by Willow's house. It was bustling inside with a grand feast set up in the yard. Mrs. Liu was enthusiastically making arrangements, saying, "Oh, I knew my son-in-law would make it big. He's driving a BMW now, ha ha ha. Our Willow has always been outstanding since she was little. You two make a great couple." Only then did I notice a BMW parked in front of their house. Makoto sneered and said, "Mom, go ahead and spend that 200,000 yen bride price. Willow won't have to suffer following me." Hearing that, Mrs. Liu's face wrinkled with joy and she kept saying, "Good, good." She added, "I told you from the beginning not to let Willow go for that civil service exam. She should have just married Makoto. It's that Wang kid from next door who influenced her." Well, now I can rest easy knowing you two are getting married. Looking at Mrs. Liu's greedy, money-driven expression, I wasn't surprised at all. But I was curious as to how Makoto had suddenly become so rich, driving a BMW and handing Mrs. Liu 200,000 yen all at once. When Mrs. Liu saw me passing by the door, she waved and called out, "Hey, "Isn't that the Wang kid? Come on in and have a meal with us." She smiled smugly. I smiled faintly and said, "No thank you, Mrs. Liu. My mom's waiting for me at home." Mrs. Liu pretended to regret it, saying, "All right, what a shame. You'll miss out on these dishes. My son-in-law paid a lot for these special dishes. If you ask me what's the point of you doing a postgrad, my daughter didn't go for postgrad or the civil service exam, yet she found such a wealthy son-in-law." The next day, the news that Willow was marrying Makoto spread throughout the village. Mrs. Liu was telling everyone that her daughter was marrying a rich man. The bride price was 200,000 yen, and he drove a BMW. I had a lot of questions, but I couldn't be bothered to dig deeper. After all, none of this mattered to me anymore. The holiday ended, and I was about to go to Sea City for work. Just before I left, Willow came to see me off, but Makoto stopped her. Makoto said, "Why send him off? Come on, I'll take you for a spin around the village in my BMW." After that, I didn't know what happened. I only heard my mom on the phone saying that Willow had gone to the city with Makoto, and I assumed she was probably living a good life now. Chapter 5. After finishing my postgrad, I successfully got a job at one of the top 3 hospitals in Sea City. My father passed away from cardiovascular disease, so becoming a doctor had always been my dream. Back in my senior year of high school, I wrote down on my goal card that I wanted to be a doctor who saves lives and heals the wounded, and now that dream had come true. I remembered the late-night study sessions during our senior year when Willow with her bright eyes had asked me, "Wang Hei, what's your goal? Let's exchange and see." On her goal card, her neat handwriting read that she wanted to become a judge upholding justice. And now we had both grown up. The girl who used to pass me little notes during evening study sessions was no longer there. One day, I went to the obstetrics and gynecology department to deliver car keys to my college classmate David. Just as I turned the corner by the stairs, I saw a familiar figure. At the department entrance, Willow was holding Makoto's arm. Makoto, on the other hand, had a frown on his face as he smoked in the hallway. There were pregnant women around all of them, giving Makoto disapproving looks. A young nurse coldly told Makoto, "Sir, please smoke in the designated smoking area. Smoking is prohibited here." Makoto gave the nurse a disdainful look and lazily replied, "Who are you to tell me what to do? I'll smoke wherever I want." The nurse's face turned bright red with anger, and she said, "This is a hospital and there are pregnant women here. Please respect the rules." Willow, protecting Makoto, arrogantly said, "I'm pregnant too. If I can smell it, why can't they?" The nurse was stunned and didn't know what to say. In the end, it was the husband of another pregnant woman who stepped in to stop Makoto. He was about 1.9 meters tall, and his intimidating presence made Makoto back off, walking away with his tail between his legs. Willow hurried after him. Makoto said, "I told you to come by yourself, but you didn't listen. What good is it with me here?" "You're driving me crazy," he grumbled, his tone harsh. Willow's eyes were filled with grievance, but she patted her belly and still endured it, trying to keep up with him as she linked her arm with his. "What are you looking at?" David patted me on the shoulder, snapping me out of my thoughts. I turned my gaze away, smiled, and said, "Nothing." David, knowing that I was acquainted with Willow, shifted his gaze away from her and sighed. "Your childhood friend. Don't even get me started. Her uterine wall is as thin as paper now. It's questionable whether this pregnancy will last. Can you believe she's with someone like him?" Earlier in the maternity checkup room, she looked so impatient. She was scared of the checkup, but had to calm him down at the same time. I silently put the keys into his pocket and calmly replied, "Respect people's choices. Maybe they're happy the way they are." I thought I wouldn't see Willow again, but to my surprise, I ran into her again when I went downstairs to grab a coffee at noon. Makoto was walking ahead with his hands in his pockets, striding across the hall while Willow was running behind him, sorting through her medical records, her hair a bit messy. When she saw me, a trace of awkwardness flashed across her face, and she said, "George, you work here?" I gave a faint, and glanced at her medical records, asking, "Everything all right?" Talking about her baby, Willow smiled sweetly and said, "The baby's healthy." Makoto snorted a look of disdain on his face. "So you're a little doctor? Huh?" Willow suddenly seemed to remember something, and spoke with a slight tone of dissatisfaction. "George, the nurses at your hospital really have no quality. A little nurse dared to tell my husband what to do." I looked at her in confusion, and she continued. "She actually stopped my husband from smoking. It's a public space, not her house. Who is she to interfere? I bet she was just trying to flirt with my husband because he's good-looking." I silently sneered inside. She knew it was a public place, especially an obstetrics and gynecology department. I replied, "Don't you know, smoking isn't allowed in hospitals? You're both educated people, at least try to follow the rules." Makoto caught the subtle insult and arrogantly retorted, "Who's uneducated? What are you, a doctor, now acting all high and mighty?" I didn't even give Makoto a glance. Instead, I turned to Willow and asked, "Are you still preparing for the civil service exam? You have a good foundation." Willow's eyes flickered slightly as she replied, "I've put it off for now. Studying too hard isn't good for the baby, and my husband doesn't want me to be so stressed." She awkwardly tugged at Makoto's sleeve and said, "We'll be going now, George." Watching the two of them walk away together, I took a sip of my cold, bitter coffee. It was as expected. Everyone has their own destiny. Maybe we once chased the same dream of the future, but Willow had met Makoto and stopped in her tracks. Although Makoto wasn't someone worth entrusting with her life, it was still her choice. I looked at the academic conference invitation on my phone and smiled. At least I wasn't her. I wouldn't stop moving forward, and I wouldn't forget the dreams I once had. Chapter 6. It had been a year since I last returned to my hometown. In that year I had spent some time studying abroad and had learned a great deal. This time I came back just in time to attend my cousin's wedding. Before the wedding I attended a gathering with some childhood friends. The table was full of familiar faces, friends I had grown up with. As we all grew up, we went our separate ways, started families, and built careers. It was rare that we could all come together like this, so it was quite lively. Someone said, "George went abroad for a year, and he's so much more serious now, ha ha ha." Among us, only George stayed true to his path, continuing his studies in healthcare. Look at me, I had to take the exam twice before I finally made it. I didn't say much, just quietly listened as everyone joked around, speaking humorously about the hardships of these past years. Then someone asked, "By the way, how is Willow doing? It's been so many years since we've seen her." Her story about giving up the interview after ranking first in the civil service exam is still being talked about in our department. The person speaking had taken the same exam as Willow and had successfully got in because Willow had opted out. Another person chimed in, "For a man, that's the fall of a god in the battle of the gods. George, you're closest to Willow. Do you have any news about her?" My hand trembled slightly as I poured the tea, and I replied with a smile. "I haven't been in contact with her for a year, so I'm not really sure." At that moment, my cousin, who had just entered with sunflower seeds in hand, overheard and leaned in, saying, "Did you guys mention Willow? Oh, you wouldn't know if you haven't been back. She got scammed. That guy dumped her and she had to abort an 8-month-old baby." I tightened my grip on the teacup and everyone was shocked. Someone asked, "Wasn't she married to a rich guy? I heard the dowry was more than 200,000. My cousin waved her hand, her expression complicated as she replied, "What, that 200,000? The guy borrowed the money. He's a deadbeat. He couldn't get any more loans, so he tricked Willow into taking out loans using her ID. Now, Willow's been dumped and owes a huge amount of debt. She can't pay it off, and she's been blacklisted. She can't even take the civil service exam anymore. I never expected that the money Makoto used to show off in front of Lou's mother was all borrowed. It was only then that I learned from my cousin that Makoto had delayed their marriage registration, tricking Willow into waiting until after the baby was born to do it. But just 3 months later, he cheated again, this time scamming an innocent college girl. When Willow found out, she was heartbroken, completely seeing through Makoto, and decided to break up and start a new life. But then, Makoto dropped a bombshell. He had already taken out over $5 million in loans using Willow's ID on various loan platforms. That $5 million was spent on gambling, keeping a mistress, buying luxury cars, and other personal expenses. Not a penny of it went to Willow. Willow's family couldn't pay off that much debt, and in the end, she became a defaulter. My cousin said George Willow's mom even came to your house to cause trouble. I frowned. My mom had never told me about this. She continued, I knew Auntie didn't tell you. Lou's mother insisted that you lend money to Willow to pay off the debt. When Willow couldn't get through to you, she caused a scene at your house. No wonder she couldn't reach me. After we parted ways at the hospital, I had blocked all of her contact details, thinking that we would never have any connection again. Everyone was murmuring in surprise. The once radiant Willow now seemed covered in dust, likely trapped in the mud for the rest of her life. The next day, when I went out to buy breakfast, I ran into Willow. When I saw her standing in front of me, I could hardly believe my eyes. Chapter 7. She seemed to have aged by at least 10 years. Her once glossy black hair was now dry and frizzy. Her face was worn with undeniable fatigue, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Now, with a bulky figure, she was helping out at Lou's mother's breakfast shop. When she saw me, she froze for a moment, and only then did a glimmer of light appear in her eyes. Lou's mother, spotting me, was overjoyed. It was as if she saw the big fool who would take the fall. She warmly greeted me, saying, "Oh, George is back. You've really made something of yourself these years. Willow's always talking about you. Come on, catch up." Lou's mother nudged Willow with her elbow, signaling her to catch up with me. A year had passed since we last sat down together, and now we calmly chatted. I learned that Willow had wanted to take the civil servant exam while pregnant, but it was Makoto who had constantly prevented her. Still, Willow secretly signed up, and with her solid foundation, she studied for a month and went to take the exam. But halfway through, Makoto called her, claiming that he had gotten into an accident while racing with friends, and urgently needed Willow to come to the hospital to take care of him. And just like that, Willow turned around midway, missing another opportunity. Willow sobbed and tightly grabbed my hand, choking out Wang Gi. I really have no way out. I'm a defaulter, buried under debt. Sob, sob, sob. I silently pulled my hand away and handed her a cup of warm water. I said, "We're adults now. The path you choose is your own." She had many chances to turn back, but she chose the most disastrous path. Unexpectedly, Willow wiped away her tears and suddenly said, "Wangge, have you always liked me?" My forehead twitched. My gut told me this was going in a bad direction. Sure enough, the next second, Willow said, "Wangge, will you marry me? I'm willing to be with you now. I've let go of Makoto. I know you've always liked me, otherwise you wouldn't have kept telling me to give him up." Looking at Willow's eyes filled with calculation, I suddenly felt everything had changed. There was no going back. I furrowed my brows and coldly replied, "You're mistaken. I advised you to let go of Makoto because I knew he wasn't a good man." Willow grew anxious. She asked, "Isn't it true you've always liked me? Why won't you admit it?" I put down the teacup and replied calmly, "The feelings of youth faded a long time ago. Willow, we're adults now. We should take responsibility for our actions." I picked up my coat, intending to leave, but once again Willow grabbed my sleeve. She gritted her teeth and spoke, "Then help me with one last thing. You're at the hospital. Can you help me get a marriage health checkup form?" I looked at her, puzzled. Willow had a look of shame, but she told the truth. She'd had 5 abortions and was no longer able to have children. Abortion would be recorded on the health checkup report showing the number of past pregnancies. She could hide her debt, but she couldn't fake the health report. The last time she went on a blind date, the man had agreed to the dowry, but when he saw the health checkup report, he immediately turned around and left. Looking at Willow, I realized this person had completely fallen apart. I said, "I don't have that kind of authority. You can't find any loopholes in this." Seeing that I wasn't helping her, Willow stood up and screamed, "Do you have no responsibility for what I've become? If Makoto hadn't called me back then, and if you had stopped me, I wouldn't be where I am now." "Why didn't you stop me back?" Then I stopped in my tracks and looked seriously at Willow's twisted face, asking in return, "If I had stopped you back then, and you and Makoto never got together, would you hate me?" Willow replied, "Of course not. If you had stopped me, I wouldn't be in this situation. At least, not like this. George, you're to blame too. You should take responsibility for my life." Hearing her say that, I almost laughed out loud. In my previous life, before I died, Willow's malicious curse seemed to still echo in my ears. She said, "You ruined my love. I want you to go to hell." Without hesitation, she pushed me into the river, laughing with delight on the shore. Even when she found out I'd hung up on her, she never stopped hating me. She caused a ruckus at my house, smashing everything to pieces. She even went to the hospital questioning how I was qualified to be a doctor. And now she confidently said she wouldn't hate me and that I should take responsibility for her life. How laughable. She had always treated me as a backup, always knowing that I had once liked her. That's why she felt so entitled to use my feelings. But now her supposed backup was gone. I got into my car without looking back and drove off slowly. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liu's mother rushing out from the yard, slapping Willow's arm, yelling, "You useless thing! Didn't you say Wang's boy always liked you? Who else could marry you? Who else could pay off your debts?" Without a second glance, I drove away, leaving Willow behind, collapsing into tears. Chapter 8. On my cousin's wedding day, I was surprised to see Willow there. She had put herself together wearing delicate makeup, and for a moment she looked like the confident and spirited woman she once was. But the sparkle in her eyes was long gone. My cousin met her husband while traveling. She had been betrayed by a scumbag during college and vowed never to trust men again, focusing on her studies, instead eventually earning both a master's and a PhD from a top university. Now she had a successful career and a happy marriage. In terms of looks and academic talent, my cousin wasn't as good as Willow. She didn't even have as good of a bachelor's degree. But the difference in their lives, on and off the stage, spoke volumes. Willow had ultimately squandered the good hand she was dealt. After the wedding, I had to leave again. Since starting work, my hometown had become nothing more than a place for winter and summer with no spring or autumn left in it for me. On the day I was leaving, Willow was waiting for me at the door of my house. She hesitated, then said, "George, do you know any lawyer friends in Sea City? Could you introduce me to a job?" Looking at her feigned innocence and the scheming look in her eyes, I knew she wasn't just going to Sea City for work. I couldn't risk passing on this unstable ticking time bomb to my friends. I rejected her, but Willow wouldn't give up. She said, "George, my mom is forcing me to go on blind dates again. She's trying to marry me off to some old man in the town." Willow moved closer to me, her eyes full of longing, and said, "George, if you don't take me with you now, I'll never have another chance." She tried to hug me, but I frowned and pushed her away. Whether she went on a blind date or who she went on it with had nothing to do with me. Without looking back, I got in my car and drove away, leaving her thin figure standing alone in the wind. Later on, I settled in Sea City and started a new life. After work, I went to the gym, took pottery classes, little things to add flavor to life. Through a colleague, I met an outstanding woman. She was completely different from Willow, bright, outgoing, and cheerful, and we got along well. As we were getting to know each other, Willow's news reached me first. She was getting married again, my mother told me. Lou's mother had forced her to go on blind dates and set her up with a man more than 10 years older. The man had been divorced with 2 children and didn't care that Willow had had abortions. He just wanted a young, pretty woman who could take care of him and his kids. He gave her a dowry of 200,000 won, and Liu's mother was grinning from ear to ear. Willow changed her phone number and sent me a message saying she was marrying someone she didn't love, and it was painful. She said she was giving me one last chance and asked if I would take her out of her misery. I was speechless. Even now, she still had the attitude of a high and mighty person bestowing her love on me. I unblocked her WeChat and, as expected, immediately received her friend request. She sent me a wedding invitation and wrote, "Wangge, I always dreamed of wearing a wedding dress for you." Do you remember that wedding dress store we passed by when we were in high school? I didn't give her a chance to continue playing the emotional card. I quickly transferred the wedding gift money. I replied, "Wishing you happiness in your marriage, a lifetime of love." Immediately, Willow sent me a video invitation, but I hung up right away. She sent me dozens of 60-second voice messages, which I didn't listen to. I blocked her again. I didn't want to go to Willow's wedding, but on that day I returned to my hometown. I really wanted to see how Willow, who had gotten her wish, was now faring. Chapter 9. The wedding scene was very simple. The old man's son and daughter were still making a mess, spilling tea everywhere. The old man never intended to treat Willow well. He just thought of her as a young, pretty nanny for his household. So when she saw me, Willow was extremely excited. Even during the wedding, she didn't want to exchange rings with the old man. It was only after he subtly threatened her that she reluctantly followed through with the ceremony. During the toasts, when the old man wasn't looking, Willow quietly came to my side, her eyes full of hope as she asked Wangge, "Are you here to take me away?" I smiled faintly at her, showing the ring on my ring finger, and said, "I'm already engaged." "Willow, congratulations on your marriage. As someone who watched you grow up, I'm truly happy for you." With every word I said, Willow's face paled. She stared at the ring on my finger, unwilling to accept, and muttered, "How could you be in a relationship with someone else? How could? Didn't you always like me?" Her eyes were filled with tears, her voice trembling. "Wangge, I know you're just looking for a replacement for me. You still have a chance to take me away." I took a step back and began my bad guy speech, coldly replying, "I only see you as a sister. Please have some self-respect. The best wishes are delivered. I'll take my leave now." Willow tried to pull me back, but she was suddenly yanked back by a strong force. The old man had appeared at some point and was glaring at her furiously. He cursed at her. "You shameless woman. On your wedding day, you're here, flirting with another man. I spent 200,000 yuan on you. You'd better behave yourself." The old man's son started crying after wetting himself, and Willow had no choice but to swallow her anger and go comfort the child. At our high school's 70th anniversary reunion, many outstanding alumni were invited back to visit. I was also on the guest list. When I returned to school, I saw many old classmates. After all these years, they had become leaders in their respective fields. I heard that Willow was also invited, but the old man had forced her to stay home to take care of the children and forbidden her from attending these gatherings. When this came up, the classmates sighed. Someone asked, "How did Willow end up like this?" Another person said, "Back then, George and Willow were childhood sweethearts. We all thought you two would end up together." "Yeah, I even saw the class flower write a love letter to George in high school. I saw Willow intercept it, declaring her ownership. I was taken aback. Had anyone really given me a love letter I didn't remember?" Seeing my confused look, the person continued, "George, you probably didn't know, but I saw it after gym class. The class flower tried to slip a love letter into your desk, but Willow stopped her and said you two would end up together." I smiled, realizing that Willow knew everything. She knew I had always liked her, so she kept sending me ambiguous signals while pretending to be innocent, dangling me along. She enjoyed my help and special treatment while simultaneously being unable to resist the temptations that came after university. How ridiculous. Luckily, the past with Willow had faded, and it no longer stirred any emotions in me. Chapter 10. While discussing the engagement plans with my girlfriend, we went back to my hometown. My mom was overjoyed. During lunch, however, we heard Lou's mother's angry shouts mixed with the sound of a broken bowl coming from next door. After my girlfriend left, my mom chatted with me about the recent happenings, saying that Willow's family had become a complete mess. My mom said, "Willow's been really reckless. I heard she owes several million in debts." She's been in touch with her deadbeat ex again. She went out to meet him, leaving her 2 kids locked in the house. The son knocked over a kettle and got burned, and her husband came home and almost beat her to death. My mom shook her head as she spoke. Willow had grown up under her watch, and seeing her fall so far made her feel some sympathy. Later, I heard that the old man had caught Willow flirting with Makoto and was threatening divorce, demanding that Liu's family return the 200,000 yuan dowry. Not only did Liu's family fail to return the money, but they also had to split 2 million yuan in divorce assets. The old man found out that Willow was actually in debt for several million. He stormed to Liu's family, smashing everything he could, and slapped Liu's mother. He yelled, "You dared to join together to deceive me. This is a fraudulent marriage. I'm telling you that several million isn't joint debt. I'm not giving you a cent, and you still need to return the 200,000 to me." At first, I just thought this was a bit of entertainment. But to my surprise, this fire ended up burning me too. Willow had actually lied to the old man, saying that the loans taken by Makoto were actually my responsibility. Before I left, the old man dragged Willow to my house, demanding that I return the 200,000 yuan dowry to Liu's family. He said, "Give me back the dowry and take this waste of a marriage daughter of yours back." I looked at Willow, who was looking guilty, and sneered. "Is this how you told him?" She said, "Brother, after all these years, how could you let me suffer like this?" I replied, "Fine." Before she could say anything else, I nodded decisively and said, "I'll go get the money. You wait here." Then I brought the police into the house. When Willow saw the police, her face immediately turned pale. I said, "The truth will be up to the police to investigate. First of all, I've never had any financial or emotional disputes with Miss Liu. Regarding your defamation and the extortion of 200,000 yuan from me, I reserve the right to pursue legal action." Seeing my stance, the old man finally understood and quickly started to smile at the police, then turned to Willow and said with a vicious tone, "You filthy woman, if you dare to deceive me, I'll beat you to death." 3 days after the police filed the case, the old man returned home in a fury, only to find Willow gone. Neighbors said that Willow packed up and ran off with a tall man the night before. After checking the surveillance footage, it turned out to be Makoto. The old man cursed his luck, feeling like his 200,000 yuan had gone down the drain. Under the police's orders, he had to come and apologize to me. I thought this incident was over, that Willow would no longer appear in my life. But to my surprise, 6 months later, a murder case made headlines. The man had fallen into massive debt and forced the woman to do unspeakable things to pay it off. The woman resisted and was beaten. The woman, nearly beaten to death, tried to call the police but was stabbed 3 times by the man. Willow was rushed to the hospital. Fortunately, she survived, but the damage was severe. She became paralyzed and had nerve damage. Knowing that Makoto was a dangerous pit, she still jumped in without hesitation. Now, this was the result she deserved. The case gained widespread attention, and after Makoto was caught, many of his previous misdeeds were brought to light, leading to him being sentenced to life in prison. When I went to visit Willow in the hospital, she had lost so much weight she hardly looked human, and she was extremely agitated when she saw me. She hoarsely said, "Are you here to laugh at me? It's all because of you. Why didn't you stop me when I interviewed you back then? Even if you didn't, why didn't you marry me when I begged you?" She blamed me for her own mistakes, her ruined life, and now expected me to bear the responsibility. Even now, she was still unwilling to face the truth and blamed others. I nodded. Yes, I was here to watch her fall. She took a life, caused my family to suffer the pain of losing a son. How could I forgive her? Now, seeing her end up like this, I finally felt that the resentment that had been lodged in my heart for so long had dissipated. I said, "A person like you would never appreciate it, even if I had helped you in the past. Admit it. Willow, you're selfish. What happened today is all the result of your own actions." When I left the hospital, it started drizzling. My new wife was waiting for me with an umbrella not far away. I smiled and walked toward her. Ahead of me was my future.